Um, what Tom was just talking about is exactly the kind of thing more coaches need to learn about what to do in practice. Mini tournaments and whatnot. In my program, I had the slide up that said um, game like, and again, I in the presentation, I don't want coaches to think that it has to be like tag is a game. A mini tournament are types of games, 1 against 1, 2 against 2, however you want to arrange it. Playing cops and robbers on the ice is a type of game. It's amazing the resistance coaches have to just doing something really goofy. Like, have you ever done a game with your kids where they play with a small football, one of those little plastic footballs?
Yesterday we started with a soccer ball.
There you go. So same thing, only different. So
Cassie did it.
Right. And the kids love it. And it's a great equalizer. The kids with burning speed can no longer just fly by people. You approach the game differently, and it's just fun. It addresses each of those 6 elements. Like, I remember a video that Dave King did in the early 80s when he was doing all that stuff for Hockey Canada. I think I've mentioned it, I don't know how many times before. The warm-up to Team Canada's practice. 22 guys on the ice. They're playing 11 aside. And Dave is skating up and down the boards, whistling. You know how he whistles with his fingers in his mouth, type of thing. Whistling and calling, nice play. It's a 6-on-4 break type of thing. It was the warm up. And I've said to coaches, why can't you do that? What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with it. It's awesome. Have some fun. Let go. So.
Yeah. Richard, I want to. This is for Tom and Wes, who isn't with us. I've wanted to experiment with stuff that Dave did because he did it with the national team, and it would work at that level unbelievably well, I feel. And the one game that he played, it was sort of his start the game warm-up. I watched him do it with the Calgary Flames. I saw him do it with the national team. Tom, I would ask you to do it with your teams. Both teams, if you practice together, the first activity after the goalies have had some shots is a 3-puck scrimmage, 9 versus 9.
We've done that. We've done that a few practices this year.
Yeah. And I haven't seen it where you keep score out of, if you get 2 out of 3, the first team to get 2 goals in out of the 3 pucks wins. And the fun of it is they don't know whether they should attack or defend because there's 3 pucks. And Dave said if you use 2 pucks, it polarizes. You get a game going sort of at each end, and there isn't transition thinking in it. So much for the technical boring stuff. 3 pucks and fun. And the Calgary Flames were doing it, having a good time. And I think it was the 3rd practice I observed. They dragged that game out. It got 18 minutes. They deliberately tried not to score so they could scrimmage. And they pulled the wool over Dave's eyes, and I started to realize, geez, okay, you might want to get on to something else, or maybe just let them play with 1 puck and keep score. And now, having Tom said what he did, just have a bunch of mini games and a competition, and they might accomplish a hell of a lot more than his deliberate practice. So,
even with a game like that, which is wonderful, going back to the constraints-led approach that I had on a slide in the presentation, you put little rules in there. Anytime there's a play around the puck, no more than 3 players can be involved. As I'm just throwing out an example, of course, or 2 players can be involved, or any number of you can't carry the puck over a blue line, or you can't carry the puck over center ice. And once you throw in little limitations like that. Now players are starting to think, and they're starting to look, and they're starting to count players around them and looking, well, I can't have more than 3 players around the puck, but I can use support. Now you go back to my 6 elements. It's fun, it's game-like, it's challenging, it's competitive. There's a high fitness component. All those elements are in there. When I did this when I met with these Oshawa coaches last Friday night, and I still remember it because I only had a beer and a half. One of the coaches, the head coach of the team, who's an outstanding coach, he's one of the best I've seen. And Tony said to me, are you expecting all 6 of these elements in this presentation to be in every practice or in every activity in every practice? And of course, I answered the question with a question, what do you expect? And he said, well, I think they should be in every activity you do in every practice. I said, okay, that's your approach. Go for it. So I'm handing it back to the adult. And this is a key principle of what we need to do as leaders in the game is, all right, what do you think? Why don't you go try it? An experience is the best teacher, but how do you get the experience? You don't try, you don't get.
Yeah, I want to jump in, Rich, on 2 things, because now you just brought up another point. But I have been designing these we called it a January skills blitz for one of the organizations I work with, and one of the pieces was that we were going to, every drill and every game that we're putting in there was to be built so that the coaches could take them and use them over and over and over again. It wasn't like a one and done. It was like, hey, these are a bunch of different samples of drills and games and play that you can use, and then we want you to incorporate this into your practices moving forward. And to your conversation about letting adults be adults and be a coach, which is the most exciting part about being on the ice with the kids, is I had designed the drill. I looked over, I'm watching the coach. He completely changed it. It was the same concept though, because in his mind, he had to, for lack of a better term, dumb it down for the 6-year-olds and the skill level he was working with. But the same concept was there. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I moved the drill around. I go, no, they're your kids. You know them better than anyone. You're in the drill. Like, don't keep doing something that's not working just because I'm giving it to you. You understood the concept. You were able to change it and fit it to the level you're at. So I think that's so important to allow coaches to just say, I can't just, download a bunch of drills offline and try to fit them into my team. You have to use the kind of the blueprint and the path, and then cater to the group that you have.
That's outstanding. And in fact, when I met with these guys last week, one of the people that we met with was an assistant coach on the team who doesn't have a lot of coaching experience, but a very bright fellow, businessman. And he said, I really like your stuff. I really like the presentation. I really like the content. What about if you just give coaches, drills and games to play? And I said, I've never done that and never going to do that. You don't learn how to coach by working from a recipe. Okay. Teachers in a classroom have a curriculum, but how they teach it, how they package it, how they present it over the course of a semester or a year is an entirely different thing. You have to try these things. And if I just give you the recipe, you'll never learn how to do it. So with the coaches I've worked with, I've often frequently pointed them to the ADM site, admkids.com. I said, you look at those lesson plans for whichever group, or go to the Hockey Canada app if you prefer. But the USA one is really clearly, it's a really nice design. Take any one of those, steal it blind, but don't steal it blind. Look at what things you think your kids should or shouldn't do, can or can't do, and how do you make it challenging, competitive, decision-making, fun, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What can you do to address these 6 elements with that practice plan? There may be things in that practice plan you feel are completely inappropriate for your kids right now, because that is a practice plan. Like, it's Hockey Canada's list of skills that they have on their site. They've had it there for years. And coaches often refer to it. And I said, that's great. But how many levels of hockey are there in your organization? Some organizations have 6, 7, 8 levels of hockey because they tier the house leagues. And then they have 4 levels of competitive above it. There is no such thing as a curriculum that can address all 7 or 8 levels. You're going to have to address that somehow. How are you going to do that?
Richard, I totally agree. Observing that all year with one coach who's following that model. I want to get Tim. He's had his hand up for a while. Tim, please.
Thanks, Wally. I mean, there's so much stuff to sort of unpack and everything here. I'm not sure one of 2 directions I want to go in, but if we go, I'll take the divergent path, I guess. If we go all the way back when we were talking before, sorry, that's my phone ringing. But if we go all the way back when Richard, you were talking early on about the game being whatever numbers you use, 45% 1-on-1, and a lot of it's 2-on-2 and 3-on-3, and that is very true. But like a lot of things, I think it's important that coaches recognize that the 1-on-1 or the 2-on-2 or the 3-on-3 is still happening within a context of a 5-on-5 game. And so, and sort of bringing in the 4 roles of hockey, like, and we talked about it before, like I really love Bill Beanie's PSB thing where you've got a person with the puck or a person on the puck defensively. And then you've got 2 people that are supporting the puck offensively, defensively. And then you've got 2 other people who are the Bs providing balance. And so I think it's really important that we keep the focus on the fact that it's a complex 5-on-5 game, because really the way it's trending at the minor level now is away from the 5-on-5 play. And what we see, or we tend to see, and this is just anecdotal and it's just sort of a subjective observation, is way more 1-on-1 play and way less Russian hockey 5-on-5 play, for a vivid way to put it together, where, somebody gets the puck and it's like 1-on-1, and now you got 4 people watching, instead of the old Tarasov thing that those 4 people watching are really what drive the game. What they do and how they react is what makes hockey what it is. That one person with the puck should be and needs to be dependent on those other 4 players to play the best hockey possible. So, although I agree that developing 1-on-1 skills is very important, developing 2-on-2, 3-on-3 close puck support is important, but let's not lose sight of the fact that it's still a 5-on-5 game, and that's the essence of hockey, is how the 4 players away from the puck cooperate with the one person that has the puck. So I just thought I'd kind of interject that as a way to maybe make sure we as collective coaches are thinking about the game the right way. I don't know if that
I
makes
agree
sense.
with you 100%, except the only catch, the only fly in the ointment here is that with kids, and I'm going to say defining kids is up to about age 12, 13, roughly, that there's way too much going on in a game to spend a ton of time with what goes on with players 3, 4, 5 on the ice, or maybe 4 or 5 on the ice. It's really difficult to do. Coaches are not equipped to figure out how to do that. And not for a moment am I suggesting to spend your whole season on 1 against 1, or spend half your season on 1 against 1 and 2 against 2. No. Somewhere along the line, they have to learn how to play the game, what your other roles are. But we have to consider the age group. We have to bring ourselves back from our own experiences as coaches and players, when we have a pretty good idea of what to do for the fourth or fifth player or the furthest player from the puck, for offensively or defensively, the kids can't think in those terms. I'm going back to this coach Tony that I met with on Friday, and he did I saw his practice before. We went for a beer and a half, and he did a 5-against-5 D zone thing with all 5 defenders with reverse sticks using the butt ends. It looked a little bit chaotic to me looking from the outside. I asked him afterwards, how did that go for you? Now, these are 14-year-old kids playing AAA. So they're pretty good, and it's a good team, and he's a great coach. He said, some of it was good, some of it was not so good. What wasn't good? A lot of kids didn't know what to do. Now, this is February, or it was February, with all those things thrown in there. Great coach, experienced coach, knowledgeable, open-minded. He did a half zone inside the blue line 5-on-5, and about a third of those kids, from what I could see, maybe more of the 10, 3 or 4 just no clue. Is he a bad coach? Too much information.
Rich, I'd like to interrupt because I believe, and this is myself and my 50 years of experience, I get 5-on-5 play over in 1 minute. And then I get into what you're talking about. The claw forecheck is the one thing, and the claw is the same as a man on box behind in defensive cover. They learn to spread out to be first, second, or third to a situation within the framework of positioning. Done. And the kids get it better than teaching deliberate drills on the ice. Just holding your hand up. Steering with F1 one way and the other. And width and depth. Read and act. End of story. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, we talked about that before, of course, Wally, and it's very applicable. We've also talked about before, or I have. I think it's as simple as, and even with the youngest kids you work with as coaches, hockey is about, yes, what's happening on the puck, but it's also very much about where is the puck going next. And it's as simple as getting the message into the kids' heads, even at 6, 7, 8 years old. Hey, when you're on offense, where's the puck going next? Try to be one of those people where it's going next, and move to open space. And if you're defending, where's the puck going next? Try to deny one of those passing options where the puck's going next. And that very simple thought process and coaching technique, I think, can start to develop that balance and whole ice and player awareness 5-on-5 type mentality. Play a game with no rules except, hey, let's be aware when your team has a puck, try to be an option for a pass. And you can have the discussion. Are you going to be open if you're standing right next to the player that has the puck? Are you maybe going to be in a better position if you're somewhere away from the puck and get the puck? And the same thing defensively. And it can be that simple. And there's zero structure, but we're developing an awareness in the players to look around a little bit, to move to open ice, and then you can obviously work in. Hey, is it harder? Is it harder to defend when the one player has the puck? Or is it harder to defend when the puck goes from there to there to there to there? Which is harder to defend? And they're simple concepts that 7-year-olds can understand, I think. I'm not a minor coach, and I never have coached. So, Mike's better equipped, and Dom and Richard, you're better equipped. But I think it's that simple at those young levels. Get that in their heads.
It is. You're right. Hence, we got to use the word hence more often. I think it's a really good word. Anyway, hence the case for small area games, 3-on-3, 4-on-4. That's why in the Pathways program, the kids are playing half ice at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. It's a smaller space. They don't have to think about as much, but the coach can give the right kind of instruction to, what are we doing here in this game? I see those two players fighting for the puck over there. What are you doing? Where should you go? What do you think you can do to help each other out? Because in the same way we don't teach Macbeth in grade 4, we have to get them being able to read a sentence, read a paragraph. Actually, maybe Macbeth, there's some elements of Macbeth that are really good that should be in grade 4. But, we progress from reading a sentence, reading a paragraph, reading a page, reading a graphic story, and then getting to a point where they can understand the nuance of what goes on around them. Same thing in the sport. Like the mental acuity of these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds is just not there to be able to handle 4 and 5 players on a team. There's just too much going on. It's confusion. Okay. And it's disorganized confusion. So you're right. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And we should be doing that. But again, we all know it. The coaches don't know it. Who's going to show them?
Richard.
Yeah.
And Mike.
Rick. Rick's up.
Rick,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead, Rick.
Thanks, Wally. Just want to hitchhike on a couple of things that I've heard so far. With this group that I'm working with more so than not this year, I introduced to them the idea, because they were playing one-on-one hockey all over the rink. They're a U18, 18. They're pretty skilled kids. Some of them fallen back from AA just for lack of positions. But I introduced to them George Kingston's 595 theory. Some of you may be aware of that, but on the idea that for all the time you're on the ice, you may have the puck by study 5% of that time. So in a 60-minute game and 3 lines, you're on the ice for 20 minutes. You may have puck contact for 1 of those minutes. And the question is, what are you doing with the rest of that time? And I talked to them about that. And then last night, one of the coaches mentioned something about battling, and the light bulb went off again. How many battles are on the ice, fellas? We're always talking about battles, but it's usually around the puck. But in reality, there's 4 other battles going on. The 4 other skaters, goalies left out in this particular illustration, they're in a battle with somebody for ice, space, time, getting into a position of support, getting into a position defensively of supporting the defense, taking away a pass option, taking away a player. So you got to start thinking in those terms. And on the other side, earlier in the year, it came to me that these players are standing around watching the player with the puck, trying to figure out how they can fit in. And I started talking to them and to other coaches about getting those other 4 players to be drivers of the play, not the puck carrier. And by that, I mean, move yourself into a position, be available to support. Support close, don't support halfway up the rink. Just introducing these different thoughts into their heads to help explain things. And I've been coaching for 40 years like a lot of you, but the one last night was the first time I've ever really conceived it in that particular way, for what it's worth.
Michael.
Yeah, no, I mean, just piggybacking on all this, it's the same as when, what I try to do, or what I do is work with these, especially the younger coaches that want to get, one of the specialties that I'm in right now is just advising new skills coaches. Like, they want to make money. Okay, well, let's put together a plan where you can make money and be in an ethical environment to teach. So one of the things we try to do is like this one-on-one, if you're working on a stride or working on, a particular very technical aspect of a player's game, it's great to be one-on-one in the corner working on those things. But when you're working on team play, and what coaches will appreciate more is every drill and every game and every structure we put the kids in, it doesn't always end in a, jump over the border, spin, shoot. Because it never happens. I mean, to your point, Rick, 5% of the time you have the puck in your stick, and less than that, you're shooting the puck. And I think, so all the drills we try to put together for the kids is there's always an end game, but the other players aren't standing in line. They're in the drill. Like if it's a 3 or 4 player to coach ratio, it's all about, okay, make the move. That's great. Make your little move, make your toe drag. That's it. You've made the play. And now there has to be options. Is it a pass? Is it a shot? Is it, do you come back and regroup? Is it a pass up to the point? So what we try to do is put those situations in so when they get into a game, they can react with not just the intention of, oh, I made a move, I'm shooting on the net, which never happens. They never get to do that. But maybe I can shoot and have some deception. I can shoot, have some delay. We've talked about this many times on this show or on this call, is the amount of times I watched what Marty St. Louis did before us in practice the last couple of years, and exactly what he's doing with his current team. It's the exact same stuff. It's the exact same drills. It's the exact same games. It's the exact same concepts. They're just obviously at a higher tick, and they're probably done where he has to react and make them even more constraint based because the player's just smarter. They figure it out quicker. And I found that out when I was working with the Connecticut Whale, and I was putting all these little constraint based games in. The women were just so good that they would get it too quick, and I have to go, okay, we got to come up with it. We got to make this constraint a little harder and the thought process a little quicker. But again, that's the art of coaching. It's the ability to see who you have and then react to it. But I think if we get away from the one-on-one beating a deviator and then skating down the ice, now we're in a much better place to put ourselves in the situation that the kids are actually training in a game-like environment. And I don't think we definitely don't, even in our small area station-based drills, we don't do enough of that.
Hence game-like.
I got to interrupt here and add, you said figure it out, but let them figure it out. We don't. When I first coached, I didn't let them figure it out. It was all me. It was all direction. It was all telling. I didn't provide a framework within which they could think and make decisions. I told them what to do in situations. And I think the lesson I learned from a parent coach was he didn't have practices. He played games. And he patted him on the back and he looked for 2 things: effort and respect. So the concept of free play and the research on what is that in terms of enjoyment and thinking is a key part. And giving them a structure within which to position to start with and interchange relative to the game has yet to become a reality. We're still north-south. The pros are beginning to scissor from D to forward. But the game is still rudimentary compared to what it could become. So, Tim, go ahead.
Thanks, Wally. I was just going to sort of piggyback on Rick's 595 George Kingston rule. And then as Mike was talking, it sort of occurred to me that it could be extrapolated not just from your general play, like maybe you have the puck. I mean, 5% is probably generous, but you maybe have the puck 5% of the time, might be in reality more like 1 or 2% of the time, but whatever it is. And then when you get the puck, we probably also have a 595 situation where you might shoot the puck at the net 5% of the time. And the other 95% of the time that you actually touch the puck, you have to pass it, protect it, or stick handle with it. And this is all going to supporting what I know I missed last week, but supporting Al Andrews and our stick length thing, everybody in the game now wants the big long stick because they can take the big shot and the hard snapper, when in reality they get to use that skill so very, very precious little amount of the time they're playing the game, and they pass up better puck handling, better passing, better puck protection by having a more appropriately sized stick, like from the chin down. So I just thought I'd interject that. So we've got the 595 and then the 595 under the 595 or under the 5. So it's the 595, 595 or something like that.
You guys are getting into math now, so I got to leave.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but it was great. Thanks, guys. Richard, nice hearing from you again. Awesome.
Richard, go ahead. We'll give you a chance to sort of summarize what you're doing and with all our thinking and bring things together, because I get so many responses from people at different levels of coaching. University coaches, minor hockey coaches, and there's many minor hockey coaches that are really listening to our show and they're applying things. So Richard, go ahead.
The purpose of my SEEP presentation is to get people thinking that there are better ways to teach our kids. Coming from people who have coached for years or taught for years or researched this for years on skill acquisition and whatnot, we could argue till the cows come home on whether or not you should have pylons in the ice or don't have pylons in the ice. But for the most part, most coaches are doing the same thing over and over and over again. They get what they get. They'll have a good team if they have, the right kids coming out, and they won't have a good team if they don't have the right kids coming out. If you're in a small association, good luck. If you're in a large one, you have a better chance. We can't compare what we do in minor hockey with what goes on above minor hockey. It's a fool's game to do that. So I feel that the onus is on us, and I'm taking it upon myself to try it out here to present coaches with some information, and then ask them, can you apply this? If you don't like something, what is your opinion based on? Is it based on emotion? Is it based on we've always done it this way? Is it based on the local junior coach says this, or I saw a presentation from a pro coach about this? And what are the commonalities between what you do with your 14-year-olds and what that coach does with his pros? Honestly, and it's not just because I'm a Montreal fan, well, maybe there's a little bit of it, but we need more coaches in pro hockey like Martin St. Louis. He is an open blank canvas. He's coming from minor hockey with virtually no coaching background. And now he may only last a couple of years, 2-3 years, then they'll get tired of him like most pro coaches. But that approach he's taking of being open to new ideas and principles, of not making the stock responses, that's wonderful. We should be taping everything he says, giving it to minor hockey coaches. Go, listen, here's a guy coaching one of the most storied franchises in sport in the world. And he's open-minded about doing this and that. We need to be that way. We need to look at alternatives, because what we've done is stayed, as in STAID stayed, and needs a little bit of a shakeup. Hence, no, never mind. No hence.
Richard, initially when you sent the form, the email out, the words SEEP, the letters, and how did you come up with that term?
It seeped into his brain one day.
It's truly brilliant. I had a revelation. The lights got brighter. We went from 40 watt to 80 watt in my house. I just looked at what are the elements. I don't want to give coaches practice rules, like you must do this, and then you must do that, and then you must do that. I think the game is too, I don't know if I'd use the word chaotic, but it's not as structured as basketball and baseball and coach centric. We got to make it kid centric. So I look, what are the pieces? And then I came up with elements. And I don't want perfect practices. I just want effective practices. There's no such thing as a perfect practice. We all know we've had some that sucked and some that just hummed. So I just said, all right, well, I've got 6 elements here. I stole a couple of ideas from Hockey USA because this guy, Zach Nowak, had actually 5 elements, but they were somewhat different. So being an unabashed, kleptomaniac, I stole a little bit from him and stole from here, stole from there, and came up with this genius acronym. Like, you have to admit, guys, I mean, come on. Hence.
Well, Rick, my biggest takeaway is what you've done throughout the entire discussion. You've mastered the art when you work with coaches of questioning. And I wish I could do that better, but just the way you've talked about what you said, what you've asked of coaches about what they were doing, you've gotten responses from them that get results.
Well, that's the teacher. Those are teachers. We do that every day.
Yeah. Well, I think I could have asked a lot more questions back in my day as teachers.
I was a vice principal for a short while, and one of the questions I would ask of a teacher who was having a problem was, "What were you thinking?" So there's that questioning as well.
That's a good question. I'm writing that one down.
What were you thinking?
I got asked that a lot as a player.
Okay.
I gotta run, guys. It was really good. Thanks, Richard. It was interesting, and like I said, we could spend another session just talking about all this stuff. It really good. So thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Tim.
Well, we're pretty good. We're at 2 hours, 32 seconds. Not bad for a typical session. So, Richard, I'm really glad you were able to get on from the get-go and listen while you had to look after the grandkids and then come back on. And I want to relate to you, Richard. The first time Daryl Belfry came on, this is a funny story. It was sort of like, oh my God, we're getting Daryl Belfry. He's written a book. He's a famous name, and he knows and respects myself and Dave King from his era of being educated as a coach. That's why he came on. He had a personal respect for the teaching elements that we were providing about 50 years ago now. And so he joined us. And he was sort of like, well, I don't know how long I can stay on. And but we got talking. And eventually he started to contribute more and more, and he got very excited. And his ideas were so new, unique, a different way of saying things that made sense. And he had to go for a COVID test. And he stayed on while in the car. After the COVID test, he came back, stayed on for another hour. And we managed to get him on 3 more times. So I think that's the nature of the beast here with our group. The ideas of everybody sort of shared and thrown about, available for listeners to take some things from. I know I got a hell of a lot out of this session. It was amazing. So thank you very much, Richard. And I'm not sure if Tom's going to stay on or not, but Tom, I'll see you at the game tonight at Crowchild. Looking forward to watching the playoffs.